Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Welcome to this meeting of the Executive Scrutiny Board at Derby City Council. It's Monday the 6th of January and we're in the full council chamber. So I'll take it in order. Apologies, please. Any apologies, Stephen?
Yes, Councillor Matthew Holmes is running late, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Talking of late, are there any late items? No? In that case, we'll move to item 3, which is any declarations of interest on items on the agenda. No? Minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of December. We did hold a meeting then, didn't we? Did we hold a meeting then? We did. Can they be approved? Okay, thank you. Forward plan. Any comments, thoughts on the content of the latest forward plan? I have to say it seems a little more populated, but not dramatically. I think there are still some items that are, Stephen, annual events, if you like, annual things that could well come forward that aren't actually on there, but work in progress. Any other comments? No? Good. Council Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations. And from memory, there were 3. 2 were accepted and 1 was already being actioned, or had already been actioned. Stephen, is that right?
Yes, Chair, that's right.
I think they were quite well received actually on the last occasion, so which was good. Any other thoughts, comments on the Council Cabinet's responses? No. In that case, we'll move on straight on to item 7 and the Council Cabinet agenda for Wednesday. That's the 8th of January. And moving through there, the key decisions. Item 8, the review of Rainsway, HWRC and bulky waste initiatives. To hear what a great success it's been. Is that you, Simon? Oh, Caroline. Thank you. Could you state your name and your role, please?
Is that it? Okay. My name's Carly Walker. I'm Technical Manager for Waste, work in the Waste Disposal team. This report is considering 6 months data relating to a couple of initiatives delivered in 2024. That's some changes to the bulky waste collection system to remove charges for 2 weeks per year, and also the removal of the booking system on a Sunday at the Household Waste Recycling Centre. And we're asking for the contents of the report to be noted. So starting with the free sessions at the Household Waste Recycling Centre, there's been various advantages and disadvantages. Positively, the free session are providing more choice for customers. Recycling levels have been roughly maintained and concerns about queuing traffic haven't materialised to the extent anticipated. Some of the drawbacks include the free sessions costing more than was anticipated, the fact that the lack of the system, a booking system on a Sunday, limits our plans for a permanent reuse shop on site on those days. And overall, general customer satisfaction with the booking system remains high. It's just over 70%. And controlling access the remainder of the week enables the council to provide a level of service that meets demand at a greatly reduced cost. With regards to the free bulky initiative, 500 free collections were made available in the spring and autumn of 2024. They were very quickly taken up by customers and take-up was spread across all ward areas across the city. One of the main reasons for the introduction of these initiatives was to support a reduction in fly tipping and help our customers to dispose of waste responsibly. However, in the 6 months the free sessions have been in place, the number of fly tips and the cost of dealing with them across Derby has actually increased, and the details are at 3.6. With regards to the household waste recycling centre, the changes were introduced smoothly. We've had no feedback from customers, either positive or negative. Forecasting the cost of providing the service is quite a tricky thing to do because of the changing tonnage profiles and the changes in the commodity markets for the sale of recyclables. However, we've now calculated that providing this change is probably likely to cost an estimated £200,000 per year for the free sessions. This is greater than was forecast. Also looking to the visitor numbers, we're getting about 700 to 800 visitors per Sunday, and the differences between pre-controls and the booking system can be seen at 4.4. We've brought in additional site staff to help manage the additional waste collected. Waste collected on site has increased overall by 16%, and at 4.5 there's a table which summarises some of the most significant changes on site. We are seeing greater quantities of some non-household materials which are often associated with tradespeople or landlords or man-with-van services, so this likely represents some avoidable costs to the council and the local taxpayer. We've got security supporting on site, looking out for those who shouldn't be using the centre. But ANPR data has shown that 96 vehicles have visited more than 12 times in 26 weeks. The top visitor has been to site 44 times, which again indicates that there is a level of misuse. Saying that, the site staff work very hard. They're well-established staff, they know our residents, and they are turning people away if they're suspected of delivering non-household waste. And you can see that 156 vehicles have been turned away in that 6-month period. 4.9 summarises the take-up of the free bulky collections by ward. So you can see that there is a spread across the city. While it's helped our customers to dispose of waste responsibly, it isn't a targeted initiative. And you can see that perhaps some of the low-income families, those without vehicles, that we would like to help to dispose of their waste responsibly, may not have reached all those people. However, there has been another trial this year carried out by the neighbourhood team with a bulky waste voucher scheme which is accessed upon referral, and that is successfully helping those genuinely in need. So as I mentioned before, over 71% of residents are either very satisfied or fairly satisfied with the booking system. It's an increase on 3% since the last survey was carried out. We're looking to further gauge public opinion on the free sessions through the MTFP consultation. Other options that we've considered is possibly reintroducing booking system on a Sunday, and that would save an estimated £200,000 per year. The neighbourhood team's bulky waste voucher scheme also represents a real opportunity to help those who need it. One thing I will point out is at 6.4, there is an error in the report which I think needs noting. The budget that was used by the neighbourhood board in the trial area was actually £3,000, not £2,000. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carly. You've presented an interpretation of what's happened over those 6 months. I suspect you might get some questions from the committee, and they might hold a view of told you. There might be a perception of "I told you so" type of thing. But I take it from the report there are actually no recommendations to Cabinet as to what to do, and whether or not this should be. Whether it's considered this as a priority for Cabinet to spend this £200,000 on Sunday opening. It's just an evaluation of what's gone on so far.
Yes, that's right. When the initiatives were approved, we were asked to bring back a review so that people could understand how they were progressing. So that it is just to note the contents, and it is just a review of the last 6 months. Okay,
well, the cost of opening Sundays, you talk about 700 or 800 people coming with waste on a Sunday. That obviously is much larger than an appointment system would accommodate on a day. So there's extra waste being deposited at the waste plant. Is the £200,000 extra cost include that extra cost of disposal?
Yes, the additional cost to the HWRC is made up of a few different factors. We've used additional staff to help marshal traffic, assist customers who need it, direct them and so on site. We also need the additional staff to manage the additional tonnage. Overall, it's a 16% increase on tonnages that we've collected on site. But also an element has been, at least initially, on security staffing. When we first started on a Sunday, we were concerned about the queuing traffic. So we had additional security staff on site. We don't have them anymore, albeit we did use them this last weekend for the Christmas festive period. But we've not needed them since. So it's made up of staffing and additional disposal costs.
Is there a breakdown of those costs in the report, or is it just?
It's that it isn't broken down now, but we have that information.
I think that might be useful if you could circulate that for us, how those extra costs are broken down. Okay, I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to come in first. You were marginally in front, Councillor Kerr, with your hand. Go on.
I'm not one of those who's been on a Sunday, nor am I one of those who's booked, because I've not had need beyond my black bin for quite a while. But therefore, one of the things I haven't been to see is the shop facility, which, from what you're saying, is working there 6 days a week, not working there. So is the shop facility something that has not happened, or can you say something a bit more about it?
What we've done so far is we've operated a pop-up shop on site. Throughout the summer, we ran that Fridays and Saturdays. We did 2 more Fridays and Saturdays during December. So for the time being, it is a pop-up shop. It is a temporary structure that we're using. It has been really successful. Longer term, we're looking to put something more permanent on site. But for now, we're using the pop-up shop to trial how it's going, where we should site it, the kind of things that people want to buy, to help us develop our plans for a fixed shop eventually.
Just follow up on that, Chair. So in terms of measurement of success, is that in terms of the number of people who stopped and looked, the quantity of materials that are being put on offer, the revenue that's coming in, the reduction in volumes? What is success, and how would you measure it? Is it being run by volunteers on behalf of a charity? Is it something that's being run by our operators?
At the moment, it's being run by our site operators, which is HW Martins. because it's a pop-up arrangement at the minute, the site staff are managing it. Longer term, we like I say, we want to have this permanent shop on site, and so there will be permanent staff more focused on selling the items. Judging it based on the tonnages of material that we've sold and the income that has been generated, and it's also on social media, it has been probably one of the most popular things that I've seen since we've been here. We had huge public interest in that, and it was mainly positive. In terms of the income raised, the arrangement is that the income is split 3 ways. So there is a third share for the contractor, a third share for the council, and a third share for a local charity.
Okay, Councillor Mulhall.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I've just got a couple of questions that relate to the bulky waste service. So back in December 2023, the report published then at 7.1, excuse me, stated that the removal of the bulky waste charge for 2 weeks per year is estimated to reduce income to the service by an indicative £9,000. Okay, and then the current report says that by providing 500 free bulky waste collection slots has led to a loss of income for the collection service of £18,000, which is double what was initially stated. So I'm just wondering what's led to basically a 100% increase on the 9K?
Okay. The 9K was based on average take-up of a paid-for service. So with the paid-for service, there isn't 100% take-up of slots, whereas with the free service, there was 100% take-up of the slots, and therefore the loss of income was greater than expected.
That was it, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to say I do welcome this approach, sort of evidence-based approach that the Cabinet are taking in terms of the review and providing us with the information over that six-month period. And there is a lot of very useful information in the report. So thank you to those who've been involved in pulling all of this together. I think it, as the report says, there are pros and cons in terms of the cost and the 200,000 that's estimated in additional cost. But on the other side of the coin, we can see that when you operate the system on the Sunday without any appointments, it does actually attract a lot of additional visitors, another 250 visits, which is waste which is being taken off the streets and could potentially otherwise be fly tipped. So it's good to see that it is creating that extra capacity for the number of visits on a Sunday. And the feedback I've had from residents is that they do like that little bit of flexibility where perhaps people have got the opportunity on a Sunday, not planned ahead and booked a spot, but can just pop by to remove any waste that they've got maybe in the house or the garden. So yes, it does cost more for dealing with that extra waste, but it is also taking waste off the streets, which could potentially be fly tipped. I think the question about the how it's taken forward. My understanding would be that this is to provide background information really for a decision to be taken in the budget process. So I wonder if officers could just perhaps confirm that's the way it's going to be handled. There is no decision at Cabinet this week, and it'll be considered further as part of the budget process. Am I right in thinking that?
Over to you, Alison. Is it in the budget? What does it say? Come on, give us
It's
an
in the
advance,
draft budget proposal. So in the report that went to February, there is a budget saving of 140,000 in relation to that. But it does say subject to the review that's being considered at Cabinet this week.
And what's the recommendation then following this?
It depends on what Cabinet decide on the review and what the final budget.
Yeah, but what's the officer's recommendation? Is it a priority?
Yeah, it's yeah. It's a balanced budget. It depends on the priorities of the council.
You should become a politician, Alison. Carly, Councillor Rawson referred to the effect on potential effect on fly tipping, and talks about you talked about the satisfaction rates. Has the Sunday opening made any difference to either of those? Is fly tipping any less, and is satisfaction any less?
Fly tipping has increased in the last 6 months. That's a fact based on the figures. And satisfaction has increased since we last did the survey. So the last survey was done in 2021. The last customer satisfaction survey at the HWRC. The most recent was done last year. So it was done prior to this particular change. So I can't comment on the impact on customer satisfaction. We will be doing another survey next year.
So it's not helped in relation to fly tipping,
It's
because we're still got more. And in terms of satisfaction, it's 3% different. Okay. Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's most informative. I just would like to draw attention to 4.9 and clear the table states the disproportionality in terms of wards and residents who felt able to benefit from the free bulky waste collections. In one of the wards where fly tipping has indeed increased exponentially, the bookings, the take-up is extremely low. Was it not preempted at the time of this initiative that residents would take up the initiative if they had the means by which they could do so? So the means by which they could transport the bulky waste, and it's not coincidence that those who were not able to gain the transportation they need were unable to access the provision. Any thoughts on that, please? And another issue here, it's already been mentioned, 5.3 in relation to satisfaction here, that dissatisfaction 62% said the booking system was unnecessary, 31% mentioned the availability of the slots, and 23% said it was difficult to use the booking system. Any thoughts on those statistics, please? Thank you.
So, Carly, I think the statistics refer to the 70% satisfaction includes the booking system, I take it, does it? And in relation to the other point, if the intention was to reach households where they hadn't got facility to take their waste to the centre or transport it, I think you were quite clear in saying it's not clear that we're hitting the right people in that regard. Is the voucher system and the trial voucher system, is that the answer to hitting the right households?
Okay. So in terms of satisfaction, 71% were satisfied. Of those who were dissatisfied, so the remaining 29%, it was made up of the reasons stated at 5.3. So this refers to 29% of the respondents, if that makes sense. So 62% of that portion said that it was unnecessary. Yep.
Chair, I'll pick up the second one if that's okay. So the free bulky waste, when that was implemented, so that's free bulky waste collections from people's properties, the request was to make 2 free weeks a year, which equated to 500 properties. So this is booked by residents themselves when they want to make those collections. When we were asked to do that, we were asked to do that citywide, so we have implemented that citywide, but the data in the table of 4.9 does show that the take-up in some of the wards, as pointed out, with higher levels of fly tipping has been quite low. So that's where we're hopeful that the new voucher scheme might be able to work in those communities, because that would be purchased from the board funding, and then they'll be able to allocate that to people who are in need. So we have been trialling that because we agree that the numbers in those areas have had low take-up.
And I guess those are the households that present a greater risk of fly tipping as a result of their inability to get the waste disposed.
That's correct.
So the voucher system, if expanded across the system, could be at least partially the answer.
Yes, it could be. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Carly, for the report you presented to us, and Simon for your contributions and comments as well. Afraid I won't be as brief as the other speakers so far, but I know the whole committee is used to that by this stage. And I'll start off by saying to our officers, it's no criticism at all of officers what I have to say on this report. I know that following the change of administration, there was essentially a 180-degree U-turn in terms of the approach to Rainsway, and I know that puts officers in a very difficult position, and I have respect for the position they're in. There's also no criticism of the street cleanse or the Rainsway staff. They all do a fantastic job, a thankless job, and I have my utmost respect for that as well. So I'll start off with the bulky waste collections element, because I read this entire report in a slightly different way than has been presented to us. But I'll start with bulky waste collections as that's the part I have the least criticism on. Free bulky waste collections was, of course, in, I think, the manifestos of every party in the city going up to the 2023 local elections. So I don't think we disagree with the premise of doing it. I think it's the method of delivery that most of us have got differing opinions on. I still reject, as I did when it was first presented to us, any claim that providing a service to 0.5% of Derby households over 1/26 of the year would quantify as a manifesto pledge delivered. I haven't brought the apples again with me, but I'm happy to go through that if anybody needs me to. And had the administration been honest about the fact this was a small step forwards, I'd have had more respect for that at the time. I'm actually quite pleased to see a bit of a split in terms of the electoral awards where people have benefited from this. I'm pleased to see we've not concentrated it in just a few areas. I think it's always important to remember that some of the wards that can be considered as the affluent wards of the city have pockets of deprivation. There are areas of some of our affluent wards that have more, have pockets with more deprivation than some of the wards that we consider to be more socially deprived wards. And I think that's always important to bear in mind. But I am interested to see what the voucher scheme is going to be, what it's going to mean, and how it's going to address things. However, in view of the fact that it comes to the Community Scrutiny Board, which I chair later on in the month, I'm going to reserve most of my comments on the voucher scheme for that particular meeting. However, I do share the same concerns that Councillor Mulhall and Councillor Kerr have highlighted around the cost that we've seen and the doubling of the cost that we've had from that. But then we turn to the changes at Rainsway. And here I have to strongly criticise the administration for the decision that they made in doing this. And I'm glad we've got a review to highlight the consequences of the decision. Because a decision was made which has messed with a system that was evidenced to work, which was in contrast to what officers had warned previously, and the actions have resulted in a huge overspend, a dirtier city, no discernible public positivity. I cannot read some of what's in this report on Rainsway as any more than a failure. 3.3 of the report, as we've sort of touched on really, shows us public satisfaction with the system is high. And that's not something we get to say a lot about services the council delivers. But public satisfaction is high. Costs are low, which again isn't that common. And the team at Rainsway can accurately plan for and deliver the best possible service when they know how many people are coming on a particular day. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of how you run something. If you're planning a Sunday roast for people, which I know Councillor Mulhall is a massive fan of, you need to know how many people are coming so that you can accurately plan the meal, ensure everybody's happy, and minimise waste. So it makes sense that this is how it was delivered. So given that's the system we had, why on earth would you mess with it? Well, 1.2 of the report seeks to give us a potential reason. Now, I believe that is the reason for the changes to the bulky waste collection service. But I don't believe that was the reason for changes to Rainsway. And I don't believe it because Councillor Dinser, who was then the cabinet member under whom these changes were brought in, told us his reasoning in 2021, when during a debate on the abolition of the booking system, he said, and I quote, "I do not agree with the officer's report that there is no correlation between fly tipping and operation of Rainsway household waste recycling. I believe, and the Labour group believes, the capacity and the obstacles of online pre-booked slots is deterring many still not to use the site and go elsewhere or fly tip." So the stated belief of the cabinet member and the ruling group was a direct correlation between the booking system and fly tipping. In other words, if the booking system isn't there, fly tipping will come down. It was a stated belief of a correlation that officers and our group leading the council at the time had said was not right. So this was ideological of a belief. So how does this decision that was made stack up with fly tipping? As we've discussed already, we should be looking, if there was a correlation, at a 14% reduction in fly tipping, given 1 in 7 days are now booking free. You'd hope it would be higher of a reduction than that, because we'd have an increase of people coming and it would reduce it. But figure 3.6 gives us the facts. A 21.5% increase in fly tipping and a near £27,000 cost increase in just 6 months. That's catastrophic in terms of trying to prove any correlation between the two. No booking system on the Sundays, free bulky waste collections 2 weeks out of 52, and yet fly tipping rises by more than a fifth, and we have a dirtier city as a result. It's a vindication for the officers at the time, and it's a vindication for my group who were correct that the council and the cabinet should follow the evidence, not follow feelings. So the administration was wrong. The review is proving that to us. And I don't believe the stated intent in the report as it leads to Rainsway, and if it was their stated intention, they catastrophically failed in what their aim was. So I don't know if it's worse to cling to that intention or to let it go. I'm honestly not sure which one would be better for them. But one other success of the booking system is its ability to keep to the 12 visits a year limit, more than sufficient for the vast majority of residents, and to keep out trade waste. Now, we've touched on it, but let's just look at how the no booking system has fared at doing that. 4.5 and 4.6 basically says we think these are tradespeople that are using some of this additional. And yeah, I think it might be as well. When you look at the percentage increase in certain materials and what those materials are, paint, plasterboard, rubble and carpets, coming in primarily on the day with no checks, yeah, it sounds like tradespeople to me as well. I think we've been had on this, and the council have been had, and the taxpayers have been had, and the administration allowed it to happen. And 4.7 makes some incredible reading. 96 individuals exceeding the yearly allocation in just 26 weeks. And one visitor making 44 trips. Just imagine how much waste it can take to justify 44 trips in 6 months. That's nearly 4 times the yearly allowance in half a year. I want to condemn and criticise this person, and I do condemn and criticise them, but you have to give a little bit of credit to a flouting of the rules so blatant and extreme, it's actually a little bit impressive. It's like a toddler breaking a window with a football, then landing it back in the toy box. I'm annoyed about the window, and I wish it hadn't happened, but what you pulled off was something I didn't quite expect. 44 trips in 6 months. But it was allowed to happen. The administration allowed it to happen. They allowed the violation of the system and the misuse of the system by creating a loophole, especially to allow it to happen when there was a system in place that was pretty good at stopping it. It's on the administration that this has happened, and that the taxpayers have felt the cost of having to deal with trade waste. But you would hope, at least you'd hope that we'd kept to budgets. We've been given the indicative figures. At least we've hopefully kept to budgets, and we haven't. We've got a near double overspend on bulky waste collections and a £59,000 overspend on a cost that was already £141,000 addition to the budget if we allowed it to go over the year. £59,000. For context, that would buy 4 more robot cleaners for the carpets in here, and we're going to miss out on all of that because we've decided on this. We'd have saved even more without the robot cleaners, of course. But £59,000 wasted on a pet project was always contrary to the evidence that had been provided, which has failed to reduce fly tipping, failed to stick to budget, failed to stop abuse, and failed to stick to purely household waste. We also see that at 4.1, the changes have resulted in no positive customer feedback when they were introduced. Recycling rates have maintained rather than rising sharply as you would want them to do if more and more people were bringing their waste into the facility. And the on-site shop cannot run on a Sunday because there's not a booking system. And some of the predicted traffic issues, I note that we're saying it's a positive that there wasn't traffic chaos, which in an extent it is, but we still brought in something that took the risk. But some issues did occur, even if not on the scale forecasted. But obviously we've then borne a cost of extra staff in order to help those things not happen. But I do know there are some Derby residents who have welcomed the change. And I understand that, mainly from what I've seen on the basis it makes it easier for people not to have to book, not to have to go through the hassle of going online and booking a slot. And I do understand and sympathise with that element of the argument. But I can almost guarantee if you lay it out to people as a detailed choice, not between should I have to book or should I not have to book, but between option 1, booking a slot at a fully prepared facility with minimal queuing, an adequate budget, on-site shop and strong recycling rate, dealing with solely household waste to keep the cost to you down. That's option 1. Or option 2, you don't have to book a slot, but there are skyrocketing costs, which is increasing your council tax, while fly tipping is still increasing across the city, recycling rates are not increasing, there's going to be an unknown queuing time, the staff can't properly prepare for the day, the on-site shop isn't going to be open, and we're going to deal with an abundance of trade waste, and there's going to be misuse of the system, which is the real choice on offer that we have. I think a few opinions are going to be swayed on that basis. But despite everything I've said so far in this, and everything that's been outlined in the administration's own report, the leader of the council still says that she believes this change has been a success. It must be wonderful to live in whatever world that's the case in, but I don't think it's this one with this review that's coming back to us. And from the discussion we had earlier, I did notice Councillor Peatfield saying in the media that it was an officer recommendation to go to £140,000 saving for the booking. I think it would be nice if administrations owned their own budget rather than trying to pin blame for anything they think might be unpopular on officers. I don't think that's a fair way to do it and to treat officers in this council. So that is my reading of the report, and I don't expect officers to respond to any bits of that, but I do have a couple of questions after Councillor Kerr, Councillor Mulhall and yourself, Chair, nicked 3 of the questions I had on my list, so you've shortened my contribution there, if nothing else. So first question I have for officers is, during the weeks where Sundays have not required booking, have all the slots during the rest of the week been booked, and has there been any reduction in the number of slots being booked?
We've actually seen an increase Monday to Saturday of book slots.
Fabulous. And we were told when this came to us in December 2023 that some of the cost of the bulky waste collection was going to be offset by a reduced cost in street cleansing from fly tipping. Has this been able to happen?
No, this hasn't been evidenced. No.
Okay, fantastic. It's what the answer I expected, unfortunately, to that one, given the increase in fly tipping that we've seen. And the final one I have is 3.1 of the report, where we're talking about the queuing traffic. So we've seen that queues, I think twice it said, reached the main road, and the additional staff were brought in to help deal with that. But it's saying that queues didn't reach the extent anticipated. How are we defining extent anticipated?
I suppose in terms of it hasn't been a regular issue. It's been irregular. It was maybe the first month that we started the free sessions. It's not continued. We've not had an issue in recent months, and things have been relatively smooth over Christmas. So.
Okay, thank you. So I think, again, to evidence the points I've made, if the positives we're looking at are that we haven't had horrendous traffic issues, but the negatives we're looking at are increased fly tipping and a huge cost overspend, I think whether this review falls as to whether this was a good decision or a bad decision should be fairly obvious. But I'll end with this bit, and again, officers, I don't expect to respond to this end bit, but I'll end with the fact that, unfortunately, some people are always going to fly tip. Some people don't care about their neighbours, or they don't see what they're doing as an issue, or they care only about themselves, or they think they can get away with it, or they're just genuinely awful people who think the world revolves around them and it doesn't matter what they do. The correlation between the booking system at Rainsway and fly tipping is not stacking up. And I hope that after hugely overspending, hugely under-delivering with the promise of fly tipping, processing trade waste, the system being abused, and no measurable public satisfaction, the administration finally understands it now, but it's come at a huge cost. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre picked up my last 2 questions that I was going to ask, but if I can expand on the one around traffic, I suspect that it's quite likely that the effect on traffic on a Sunday is less likely, A, because of less local traffic going around their normal business, and certainly in relation to the premises directly outside the centre, the traffic to them would be minimal on a Sunday, and as a result you are less likely to get the massive queues that we suffered in the past. Any thoughts on that, Carla?
That is one of the reasons we picked a Sunday. We thought that it would be quieter. The other thing is we haven't seen the spikes that we saw in the past. So historically at our peak, we'd seen about 1,200 people a day trying to access Rainsway on a sunny bank holiday. We've not seen that so far this year. So whether people's habits have changed, like we've already mentioned, people do tend to be booking up more slots during the week and on a Saturday. So yeah, we've been seeing 700 to 800 visitors as opposed to 1,200 visitors trying to access sites. So I think people's habits have changed in the last few years.
Some people have memories as well, Carly. I well remember turning up there and thinking, "You for an hour, I'll come back another day." Now they've got the opportunity to come back on a different day without having to queue because they've got a booking system. So I think that's probably memories that's kicking in there as well. Any other further comments, questions before I try and sum up? Yes, Lucy.
I think it's been a really interesting discussion, Chair, and I think it shows how you can be presented with a range of data and it can be interpreted in a number of ways. So, for example, it might be that the fly tipping would have been a lot worse without the change on Sundays, but we don't know because it's just a snapshot and it's one city and it's 1 year and we can't tell. But
it's not created a reduction.
It certainly hasn't created a reduction, but there could have been a greater increase. We don't know.
Yeah.
But there are three things, Chair, that I feel that we ought to be exploring, or at least Cabinet ought to be exploring and taking forward. I think the potential for the second-hand shop is quite exciting, and I think that has both, you know, some of it may be household goods like a charity shop, but it may also be things like slabs that people want to take away and reuse in their gardens, and can also be of value, and it therefore needs to be something that I would very much like to have explored going further. But it may simply be that if they're continuing to have a free-for-all on Sundays, it isn't open on Sundays, and we could have it operating 6 days a week, and that might be the solution. But I think we also need to accommodate people turning up to buy those slabs in the hope that there are some slabs there, even though they haven't got anything they're actually wanting to take to Rainsway. And we'll need to know how we are accommodating visits by people who aren't booked but are wanting to be shoppers. The second thing I think is really interesting is the neighbourhood board who have introduced the targeted vouchers, bulky waste vouchers. And I think that is something which merits further exploration, and it might be something that could go citywide at a significantly reduced cost to the free-for-all on Sundays, and that is introduced. And I think that's worth exploring. And the other thing that's flagged up here is what happens to the trade waste people, or people who are seriously suspected of bringing trade waste, who are either being allowed to deposit things or being turned away. And I don't know whether at the moment we will accept trade waste at Rainsway. I'm getting shakes of heads there. Or whether we are potentially allowed to do that. And it's something that we could explore for those people who have turned up illicitly, and we could charge them a premium rate for accepting their trade waste because they've got here, and make it a commercial venture. So those are the three things, and I've put some words together, Chair, if anybody wishes to support any of those as a suggestion to Cabinet.
I don't have any argument with the first two, Lucy. In terms of the trade waste, Simon, we clearly don't engage in, say, trade waste, do we? They have to make their own arrangements in relation to trade waste.
In terms of trade waste, the licence that we've got, we're not allowed to accept trade waste. So it is just household waste that we can accept at Rainsway.
So the third one's out, Lucy, in that respect. Come back to you in relation to the wording. Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's has been an interesting debate. Councillor Eyre has defended the previous administration's policy very spiritedly, as we'd expect him to do, I'm sure. But for me, it will ultimately be a political choice, and it will be about balancing up the convenience and the choice that's offered by offering an alternative on a Sunday compared to some of the issues that have been raised in the report. I think the point about trade waste that Councillor Eyre made is well made, and if this continues, then it's something that we will need to look into. perhaps slightly over-egged. There was one individual with that high number of visits, 44, I think, but I think the general point is fair that if it's going to be open access on a Sunday, it needs to be some way of keeping the trade waste out. Councillor Kerr's points as well, I think I agree with. We can't tell, but it could very well be the case that fly tipping would have been even higher if this opportunity hadn't been offered to people. So I think in general, I think it's been a success, and would like it to continue if at all possible. But as I say, that does need to be balanced against the budget, which we'll be considering in future in the next few weeks. I think Councillor Kerr's point in terms of the shop as well, I would support a recommendation on that, trying to find a way of getting that going on a more sustainable basis, because it's an important part of recycling in terms of reuse, and it will help residents in the city, and it'll help our recycling rates as well. So I don't know if we have a form of words for that, but I think I'll support the principle.
Well, we'll see what Councillor Kerr comes up in terms of a form of words, but can I just make a couple of comments on that? Again, referring to Councillor Kerr's comment about, you know, the assessment has been useful, if nothing else, just to show a picture of what's happening now. As Councillor Kerr points out, you can interpret that two different ways, but I would argue that there is little or no evidence to say that the cost of £200,000 is borne out in the improvement to the overall situation. In fact, it's the opposite way. The evidence suggests that there's no improvement, certainly in terms of customer satisfaction, fly tipping, and a number of other things. So, the interpretation of the figures is what it is. But if you took this as a trial, opening on a Sunday as a trial, to see how it went, and if you took in the costs, because it has to be a reasonable cost, a sensible cost. If you're going to go out on a limb to do something like this, you wouldn't continue it. You might well continue and look to expand the on-site shop side of things. It sounds to me like the targeted voucher system to hit those with greater need or inability to get rid of their own waste sounds like a sensible thing, which if you're prepared to commit public funds to, then maybe you might lose the extra cost, but redirect some of that extra cost, some of that saving towards those two initiatives and see if that works on a trial basis. But the danger is that, far be it from me to suggest that this was a political manifesto pledged to please the people in the first place, or that the administration might be might not want to do a U-turn on this. The fact is that from a public expense point of view, the administration certainly need to look and suggest and be able to evidence the extra cost of £200,000 at a time when there's pressure on all manner of budgets. So as a committee, I think we need to look at the recommendations that we could come up with. I absolutely agree that the expansion of the on-site shop could be pursued, and further further trials and an expansion of a targeted voucher system would be worth pursuing. So if those two things are included, I think we could all, as a committee, accept those. It's whether or not we feel as a committee that the recommendation should be to stop the open access on a Sunday and use some of the savings that you'd make from that to pursue those two aspects.
Chair, the first one I think is easier, less contentious. For Cabinet to explore the potential to set up a permanent second-hand shop at the Rainsway site to be open on the days when visits to the recycling facility are booked, and to ensure that shoppers can be accommodated even when they are not coming on a booked slot.
The last bit might be more of an issue because the idea of providing appointments is to control the number of vehicles on site at any one time, and I would imagine, what would you think the practical difficulties of allowing access just to visit the on-site shop?
Well,
Just 1 minute, let the officer come back, Councillor Wright, I'll come back to you.
while we've been operating the pop-up shops, we have been allowing people in if they have come just to visit the shop. Because it's a trial, we've been able to sort of see how things work, and it has worked okay, so it probably is something that we could continue to do while ever there were no issues there. So,
Well, that could be part of a further trial to see how that works in terms of allowing access and the numbers that come and the effect on the access to the main recycling site. So we could probably leave that in, Lucy. Sorry, Councillor Wright.
I was just thinking about the staffing implication of having staffing the shop.
I think from what I heard, the proceeds are split 3 ways, so presumably the operators feel it's worth their while operating the plant, both in terms of reducing the waste but taking their 1/3 cut alongside the council and a voluntary or a charitable organisation. Is that the case, Carly?
it will depend on the exact model the shop takes. Obviously, if we've got a fixed structure there with lots of ongoing costs, that will reduce the amount of revenue that is generated. At the minute, with the pop-up that we are trialling, the ongoing costs are quite low, so we're generating a reasonable amount of income. So it will depend on the exact model the shop takes in the future as to the revenue that's generated there.
You might even be able to explore voluntary sales staff.
We
Maybe
will.
there's options. Sorry, Lucy, yes, the second one.
Yeah, I don't think we need to micro-design this facility. I think the principle is what we talk about here, and there are partners involved and they need to talk about it. The second point, Chair, is that when Cabinet consider a way forward for the household waste, they balance the additional £200,000 cost for unbooked Sundays and the cost of dealing with fly tipping against potentially introducing free targeted bulky waste collection vouchers citywide to directly address fly tipping and add to the education about the unacceptability of fly tipping. So again, I'm not trying to micro-design something. I'm just saying that Cabinet should consider this because I think it's something that could be a benefit.
Thoughts on that one?
I think, Chair, just to avoid conflating the two issues, we'd need the figure to be 218k to take the 200 from the Rainsway and the 18 from the bulky waste. I think we'd have to, the figure would need to be 218, but other than that, I think it would work.
You okay with that, Lucy?
I'm not precious about £18,000 here or there.
Okay.
I think if it's of any help to the committee, the reason I'm happy to second that, and the reason I'm happy to second that one is I think what we're asking in the recommendation is for Cabinet to look at the £218,000 in total and just assess, is this the best way of using that £218,000 to tackle fly tipping in the city? Is it the best way to have this Sunday no booking session and then spend £18,000 on these 500 slots? I would say no. At a certain point, the Cabinet has said yes. We could vote now on the merits of the booking system or not, and we'd split down whatever lines we would. But I think the one thing, hopefully, as a committee, we can agree on is asking Cabinet to look at this £218,000 and assess, are these methods the best way of spending that money to reduce fly tipping?
Recommendations can be agreed, yeah? Anybody against? No. Okay. Good. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Simon. Good luck. Okay, moving on then. It moves us on to item 9, the approval of the council tax support scheme.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a regular annual report that comes to Cabinet for the Council Tax Support Scheme, which is a scheme that supports working age claimants who require financial assistance for paying their council tax bills. And the minimum contribution within the scheme that's included at Appendix 1 is 30%. That's minimum contribution 30% for the council tax bill. There are no changes proposed for the scheme for next financial year. It is a continuation of the current scheme that was introduced in April 2013. Thank you.
Sorry, excuse my ignorance, Alison. There's a grant to be able to provide council tax support, is there?
No, this is funded from the collection fund from the council tax base, so it's funded from council tax itself generated.
There's no change in the level for this year. Any thoughts, comments, questions, Lucy?
In the following report, Chair, we learn that this is costing us around £7,000 a year, which isn't very much. But I wondered how many people are actually claiming and what's the success rate within those who are claiming and how it's publicised.
It's publicised on the website, so it's readily available there. If you go onto the website and look for support to pay council tax, there's a list of the council tax support scheme and the discretionary schemes as well that we operate. In terms of numbers of claimants, I'm afraid I don't have that, Councillor Kerr. It would be something I'd have to come back to you.
We're in most need? Yeah? We'll note it with approval in the circumstances. So item 10 is the council tax base for 25-26.
Thank you. So this is a prominent feature of component of the MTFP, of the medium-term financial plan. Each year we have to calculate the council tax base, which is an estimated figure of the number of domestic properties in Band D equivalents. And we have a requirement to notify our preceptors by the end of January in terms of what that council tax will be, and our preceptors being the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Authority. You can see in the report there's been a slight proposed increase in the council tax base. The council tax base has increased by just shy of 1,300 bandy equivalents compared to last year, and that's predominantly a result of increased numbers of dwellings within the city between December and March. The council tax base is adjusted by the council tax support scheme, which has just been previous report, but also assumes a level of collection rate over the period. The collection rate for the council tax base has been increased this financial year, for next financial year, to 98.4%, which is up 1% from last year, which the council tax base for 24-25 was assumed at a level of 97.4%.
This has cropped up before, Alison, in terms of collection rates or predicted collection rates, because that's what they are effectively, isn't it? We had a target of 97 point something. Are we going to meet that, or are we where we are on that for this year?
We're just gathering data for quarter 3 in terms for this financial year, and the collection rates are very minutely slightly down on our assumptions at quarter 3. So our council tax collection rate at quarter 3 is 79.56%, which is 0.18% down on our last year's collection rate. So we're not far from our targets.
Because any increase in the predicted collection rates adds to the money available in the MTFP. By how much, do you know?
Well, it's done over it's over a period of time, so we do it over 3 years, and it washes through the collection fund. But it's usually round about 1%, is usually round about just over £1 million. So it's, you know, it's significant income to the council in terms of being able to levy those successful collection rates.
So I think it's good to be ambitious in terms of collection rates, and I've encouraged it in previous years. But there is a danger there that if you don't meet those collection rates, then it adds to your budget pressures during the year, yeah?
It absolutely does. It washes through what we call the collection fund, and the collection fund carries either a deficit or surplus that you can either utilise or you have to top up. So yeah, it's important that we are quite accurate, or else it would be storing up future budget problems if the collection fund was to go into deficit.
So how's 98.4 compared to our comparators or in the business?
Well, I've not seen the analysis for next, because the reports will only just be coming out, but when we did the analysis last year, when we were at 97.4%, we were about on average with the region at that level. So I wouldn't expect us to be an outlier, probably moving a little bit up the table at that point, but that's probably something we can look at when other authorities have set their council tax base reports, and that information is available publicly.
Right, so I'm up for being ambitious in collection rates, but not for using it as to supplement the MTFP, if you know what I mean.
No, neither am I, Chair.
Okay. Any further comments, questions? No? Thank you. So it just leaves us with item 11 in compliance contract financial matters.
Thank you, Chair. So there's one item for this month's Cabinet, and this is in relation to a capital bid, to the submission of a capital bid to the Midlands Net Zero Hub of circa £3.28 million. The bid is for the Warm Homes Local Grant Scheme. The government's committed to a warm homes plan to upgrade nationally 5 million homes over the next 5 years to cut bills for families and deliver warmer homes to slash fuel poverty. This is for this funding is for providing grants to improve energy performance and upgrades and low carbon heating to low income households living in the worst quality privately owned homes. So the report is asking for approval to submit the bid to the with the Midlands Net Zero Hub Department, and also to add to the capital programme, if we're successful, the £3.28 million. And there's also some delegated authorities to relevant officers to approve, should we get the grant, to approve the grant terms to individual homes and procure a delivery contractor if the bid is successful. Thank you.
Comments, questions on relation to this? Councillor Kerr?
Can you clarify as to whether this would be open to all households within the city who are low income and with a energy inefficient property, or whether you have to be living within one of the most deprived areas as well? I'm not quite clear from the reading of the report.
Actually, Lucy, you picked up on a question I was going to ask in relation to the eligibility criteria on page 51. It's not easy to understand at a glance who is going to be eligible and who's not. And I don't think it is going to apply, as most of them haven't so far, to people other than in categories of need by reading that. Is that the case?
I mean, the eligibility criteria is at Appendix 1, that the details the criteria. So most deprived areas, households demonstrate means tested, annual gross income below £36,000 after housing cost threshold. So those are detailed within Appendix 1 of the report. There's also some property eligibility on there around the EPC ratings.
Through you, Chair, and we don't have any choice about those criteria?
No, they're all stipulated as part of the grant.
Because it concerns me, Chair, that if you are living in a poorly insulated house as a low-income household in what is otherwise a more affluent area, you will not be eligible to receive any support. And that, these days, may include people who are in an ex-council house, which has not yet been improved, because the council houses around you have been improved and are therefore no longer within the most deprived area. So I just feel that it may be that we are not advocating in what is being presented to us for those who are actually most in need, but we're looking at something which is being determined from external to Derby. And I don't know whether we ought to be pushing back against that, if my interpretation of that is correct.
I absolutely take your point, Lucy, and my concern was around the effect on private rented properties, which are often the houses where the insulation is poorest and the damp and everything else that goes with it. But there's no incentive on the private landlords to take up or to use any of these grants. The criteria, and I think they are set by almost nationally, allows for a private landlord to do one home under the scheme, and then after that contribute 50% to any improvements. There's not a lot of incentive there for private landlords, in my view, to take up this as much as it might be needed. But I think the problem is we could push as much as we like, Lucy, but it's not something we can affect. If we accept the grant, we accept the property eligibility. Is that right, Alison?
That's right, Chair.
Yeah, I think we maybe need to take that up somewhere else through government or MPs or whatever.
Chair, we are part of an extended group of organisations listed in the following appendix in the Midlands Net Zero Hub area, which is quite a lot of us. And I wonder whether, if this is something which is highlighted to those groups, whether we, as a group, as a larger group, we could have a strong enough voice to be able to ensure that we are dealing with this in the most effective way. Is there an organisation that these groups talk together that we could raise it with?
You're right. There's a list of maybe 200 by the looks of it. There's an awful lot of authorities there that are involved. But and you would hope that if there was a fundamental problem with the property eligibility that amongst those groups, it would be picked out and actioned. Alison, any thoughts on how you just may raise it as an issue?
It's probably, if I have a word with the service and just have a chat with them around what they think their degree of influence might be in terms of that collaborative voice, and then get that officer to come back to you with any suggestions around
Maybe
that.
what the mechanism is for
Yes.
raising any concerns about it.
Absolutely.
Might be part of the bidding process, I don't know. Okay, any other comments, thoughts? No? Was that the one on there, Alison? Is there anything else? And that, I think, concludes business for the night. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next week for maybe a longer meeting.